when I'm looking at like distribution companies, I would probably say IPC's the closest one to mine, because they produce NME, and I think although NME will probably be a rival in a way, I would focus primarily on guitar bands, whereas they've moved their focus towards like hip hop because they were having a decline in sales. And although mine will be like a niche market to start with, like over time, I would come to I would come to gain like I would gain a reputation, I suppose. Like we will become like a bigger brand, and with the connotations of Rolling Stone that's in my cover and my title, my masthead, like I feel like I've already got an instant target audience there, and I feel like that'll like gain us some followers straight away, and like over time I think the readership that NMA will lose through starting to focus on hip hop bands, I'll pick up on like what they lose in guitar bands. And the reason that I think this is because like I think music's got a way of cycling itself. It doesn't stick with one way. Like if you look like over the decades, like if you look at this 60s, you've got like the introduction of like psychedelic rock, and then the 50s you've got like rock and roll like starting up with Little Richard and Chuck Berry. In the 60s you've got the Beatles, and then moving on to like 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 rock was developing. Then there was like bands like Jefferson Airplane, who like experimented in like psychedelic rock, the same as what the Beatles done later in their career. And then by the 70s, like rock and roll was still like prominent within like Cream and Led Zeppelin and stuff, but there was also like the disco era and like Motown. Like although that was the 60s Motown, like the influence of Motown didn't really like feature in, like prominent within the charts until like the 70s. Then the 80s you've got like bands like Duran Duran, that's like electro, and then like that carried on like throughout that decade, and by the 90s you've got Britpop with Oasis, and like the reintroduction of guitar bands and like British pride. And then the 2000s, I think like they were pretty much dominated by like techno acts again, like and boy bands and girl bands, and like I don't really think there was a prominent guitar band throughout the 2000s. And I think like one thing is that like there's a cycle, and I think like maybe not this decade but the decade after, like the 20s, I think that like guitar bands will like make a re-emergence, and like they become like a prominent feature. So I think there is a market there, especially if there's already an established magazine that's like willing to like that's been about for a long time and willing to pick up on this and focus solely on this like movement that'll like come eventually. So I think in terms of distribution, I think IPC will be the best for mine. And when you look at like the distribution, like things are moving into the technological age, and I think with the fact that I've put like Verve Monthly on Verve Weekly like website on me front cover, I think that like accentuates like the way things are going to go, and like how music's going to become like more of like a computer thing, and like CDs will like fade away. You'll like iTunes and like Spotify and stuff will be like, what's the future? And I think that the fact I've already like jumped on this bandwagon of like the internet revolution, I think it's put us in a prime position for when like the re-emergence of guitar bands does come about. So I feel like the like having a like having a internet web page, I think that's a good thing for the simple fact that like like I'm already like ahead of the times, and like I'm ready to like capitalise on like the success that the internet will probably have in the next decade. I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger, and I think there'll be new forms of social media to like share music and stuff. And I think within a certain amount of time, I think like old companies will have to rethink like the business model. I think they'll have to like probably like cut down on CDs and like change them to, like the way records are. This is like 20-30 years in the future, but I think like the internet will dominate, and like CDs will be like like they'll be niche, like they'll still be around, but there'll be like very few shops. Like with HMV going into bankruptcy lately, like it just shows like how much the feeding market is for buying actual CDs, because there's illegal downloads and like even legal downloads on there. So I don't think like focusing solely on a magazine will be a good form of distribution. I think you need to start to look at like the changing tides around like society now with the internet.